A commitment to weather to keep you ahead of the storm. News Channel 19.
Driving is a privilege, not a right. And too often, we as a society and as parents allow our children to take to the highways ill-prepared to deal with the challenges they'll face. We should be harder on our children about safe driving. It's not easy to do. I have a teen just starting to drive, and I know how hard it is to think about being tough on our children. But as a parent, we need to think about our own actions. Something as simple as driving faster than the speed limit or speeding up for a yellow light sends a message to everyone in the car, a message that could bring deadly results. Every year, News Channel 19 brings you stories of teenage tragedy and death in car wrecks. And frankly, this news team hates to cover stories like that. Young lives cut short. They're sad stories, and often people focus so much on the loss, they don't take the time to reflect on what they can do to stop the next deadly car crash. That's what our special is about. It's an opportunity for you to sit down with your teenager and watch, listen, and learn how not to end up in our newscast. If your teen isn't going to see it, record it, save it, make them watch it. You'll never know if it helped them stay safe, but it's better than wondering if it could have.
Short in an instant.
I didn't believe it until I saw it on the news.
Think it will never happen to you?
I mean, it just didn't seem real at all.
Some friends experienced their first real loss.
She was always happy. I don't think I ever seen her when she'd been small.
It's a moment they wish they could erase. But the loved one is suddenly a memory.
Well, good morning and welcome to this News Channel 19 special. It Will Never Happen to Me. I'm Kim Richardson.
And I'm Jerry Hayes. For the next hour, we are going to be looking at something that comes up every year, our teenagers dying in car crashes.
Yeah, we're here at Huntsville Hospital's emergency room, a place that sees all too many teens rushed in from wrecks, some who never leave.
We have brought together a panel of experts today on the subject and, of course, teen driving, and we're going to hear from those folks in just a moment.
First, let's hear from local teens. News Channel 19 senior reporter Steve Johnson joins us live from the WHNT studio, where he's with a group of teens who are watching this broadcast. Steve?
Well, I'll tell you what, Kim, I'm sitting here with a group of fine teenagers, some who drive, some who are learning to drive. Show of hands, how many of you guys think that teenagers are unsafe drivers? Raise your hand. Now that's interesting. You're teenagers. You two are learning. Why do you think teenagers, Mark, why do you think teenagers are unsafe?
Well, because, I mean, we're so inexperienced and, you know, we have only had our licenses a few months or permits a few months. And so we really haven't been trained, you know, how to deal with sometimes wet roads and different things like that.
Should you have your driver's license?
I think I probably should have it, but I'd probably need to take a few more driving lessons, probably at a performance driving school or somewhere like that, to where they actually teach you how to deal with maybe your car slipping out of control.
Okay, Daniel, you're 18. You've had yours a little longer. What do you think?
I can back Mark up on what he just said. I think a lot of teenagers are very inexperienced, and a lot of times they become overconfident with their driving, and thus they become more prone to accidents. And just like he said, more education, getting them more involved, more experience, that can definitely help in the long run.
All right, Jenny Lou, you have your permit. What do you, when you hear this, does it worry you? Does it scare you? I mean, are you afraid to drive?
I'm not afraid to drive, but like a friend of mine, she had 2 wrecks in the first year after she got her license. And that was really scary because it really brought it home. She didn't get hurt badly, but it was like, wow, that could have been me.
Oh, it's certainly, Skip, this young man, Jonathan, I know you've had a wreck. It wasn't your fault, but did it make you a little more tentative as a driver?
Yeah, it did. It made me look at a lot more things that happen on the road, made me really more alert at what was happening around me, and made me just, you know, just...
Just a little nervous.
No, just to be alert and look for certain signs of stuff that's about to happen.
Okay, now, Jonathan, you're learning how. What are you trying to think about when you're learning how to drive?
I'm just trying to be really cautious, make sure I do everything right, and try not to get in trouble or hurt myself or anyone else.
Do you guys feel like teenagers can be good drivers if they have enough education?
Yeah, definitely.
So you do. You agree that if you just, well, what do you need to do? Do you need to take driver's ed?
It can help. I've taken driver's ed before, and it does get you a little bit of experience, and you do get a experienced teacher in the car with you. But yeah, driver's ed really helps. I think you should take it at least when you're in high school.
Well, you know, I mean, adults have wrecks too, but I've got the feeling though that you all think that experience, that you've got to go through wet streets and things like that before you really become good drivers. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, you think about it, most adults, even though they've had the seat time, some of them aren't as experienced as others. And I think really what you have to do is experience a little bit of everything before you can actually become good at it.
Okay, well, guys, thank you. We will be back, and we'll get your take on what you hear here today. In any case, teenagers have some interesting ideas. They're the ones we're talking about, the drivers who can be safe or unsafe. Guys, we'll be back.
Have to say about driving with taking driver's ed courses and a couple other things they mentioned as well.
My daughter was not going to get in the car until she had driver's ed, and she took it and passed it. And it saves on your insurance too.
Yeah, I know it did when I was younger. I was wondering if it still did the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Joining us now is Alabama State Trooper Curtis Somerville. We want to thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you all for having me.
Curtis, before we start, let's take a look at some statistics, and these are from the website drivehomesafe.com, and we're going to put those up full screen for you. First of all, 14% of all deaths due to motor vehicle accidents are teen drivers.
Yeah, and then most teen drivers' deaths occur on the weekends, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Also, of teen drivers killed in crashes, more than half were speeding.
Now, teen drivers killed in crashes, 45% of the time, teen drivers killed had youth passengers in the vehicle with them.
Do any of the numbers surprise you, Curtis? I mean, is this something pretty much what you see out there on the road?
This is pretty much the norm, Jerry. When you talk about youth passengers or other people in the vehicle with teenagers, a lot of times it's often that distraction they get from other drivers in the car with them. So this is not surprising at all. I'm surprised it's not more.
Now, Curtis, I know that they're here in the hospital working an accident where some teens were brought in early this morning. Couple of kids in the car. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we have a 16-year-old driver and a 14-year-old passenger. As a result of that collision, the 14-year-old passenger is here at the hospital, we believe in serious condition. We're still investigating the wreck. As we said, it happened this morning, so we're still investigating. But that kind of goes to show that we're here doing this program and how frequently these wrecks happen that involve teenagers. So certainly we're looking at every aspect. We're looking at the aspect that maybe the teenager was speeding. We don't know yet. Maybe there was alcohol involved. So we're looking at every aspect of the wreck at this point.
Curtis, as a state trooper, somebody who enforces the law, and you have to respond to these wrecks, and you see that they're teenagers, what's the first thing that goes through your mind?
Well, you know, I think oftentimes as a state trooper, we get asked questions, how do we deal with, you know, the everyday goings of actually working traffic fatalities, dealing with people that have been killed in car wrecks. And you get to a point, I don't want to say you get used to it, but it always affects you when there's a teenager involved. I think that's the only, at some point when you tend to think about it a little bit more for a day or two extra, is because there's a teenager involved. And certainly if you have children, you certainly think about it. So we try to get into schools and educate teenagers as best we can. We also try to get parents to educate teenagers as best they can. So certainly it's an epidemic that's starting to go on, and we're starting to try to nip it in the bud, so to speak, before it gets out of hand.
All right, Curtis, thank you so much for joining us. Alabama State Trooper Curtis Somerville, we appreciate it. Now, driving is very serious business. It's a privilege that most 16, 17, and 18-year-olds don't think twice about until their lives are actually touched by tragedy.
That's right. News Channel 19's Carson Clark joins us now from Albertville. And Carson, I know that you've covered 2 wrecks recently where teens died in car wrecks close to the end of the school year.
Well, that's right, Jerry. We've had 2 very recently, and in fact, since November, we have had 5 teenagers killed in car accidents. Back in November, 17-year-old Carissa Neely and 16-year-old Michael King died. They were at Sylvania High School. And then back in March, 19-year-old Thomas Stone died in a car accident. Last week, 16-year-old Brittany Little of Section died in a car accident. And about 2 weeks ago, Anna Curry, a 17-year-old at Douglas High School, was killed in a car accident. And in the car with her was her boyfriend, Isaac Godwin. He was critically hurt in that accident. And joining me now here in Albertville are some friends of Isaac. I'm going to go ahead and get your names.
I'm Jeff.
Okay.
Haley Smith.
John.
Destin Ross.
Okay, and I guess the first question is, how's Isaac doing now?
He's doing pretty well considering all things happened. He's in a body cast from the head to the pelvis, and he's getting moved to Atlanta pretty soon. So,
have you been to see him?
Not yet. I'll be going pretty soon.
I have. I went and talked to him a little bit. He wasn't very responsive, but he said a couple things. He said bye and hello and oh no, all those things.
After that accident, has that affected the way any of you drive?
Yeah, it really has, because that's not the first person we've lost. We've lost 3 people in the past probably 2 years, and it's a real devastating tragedy that happens, and I think it makes all of us realize, we need to be a lot more careful.
Because this accident has really changed his life, right?
Yeah, not only do we know Isaac, we know Anna, and it's really hard, so.
Okay. Do you see it affecting the way you drive in the future and how you're going to conduct yourselves on the road?
Oh, definitely. I was a speed demon before this happened, but I decided to slow down and play it safe.
Okay. All right. We'll be coming back to you guys a little bit later on, and we're going to be talking to an Albertville police officer whose job is to handle traffic accidents out on the roads. But we'll be coming back here in just a little bit later. We now throw it back to the Huntsville ER with Jerry and Kim.
All right, Carson, thank you. And joining us live now is Sergeant Mark Shahan with the Huntsville Police Department. Sergeant, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sergeant Shahan, you're on the traffic task force. Let's talk a little bit about distractions for teenagers that are driving. A lot of those are deadly. You were just mentioning something ago about televisions.
Yes, ma'am. More cars are being manufactured with television sets in the back, and now people are putting them aftermarket in the front also. That's definitely a distraction. Somebody's sitting in the front seat trying to drive. Maybe the passenger turns it on to watch it, but the driver is going to be drawn to it eventually to watch TV along with everybody else. We see more and more of that.
Another distraction that everybody has, not just teenagers, but adults as well, the radio or the CD player.
Yes, sir. Putting CDs in, taking them out, changing the channel, they're not paying attention to what's going on the road. We see that quite a bit now.
A big one that we've been hearing a lot about, cell phones.
Right. Cell phones are becoming more and more popular. Everybody's driving down the road with them. They make hands-free sets, which will cut down somewhat. The ideal thing to do if you're going to drive, talk on the phone, is pull over and use the phone in the parking lot.
Being out there on the road, you probably and the other officers see this more than we do, just driving back and forth to work or going to wherever we're going. People eating or drinking while they're driving.
Yes, we'll see them reading the newspaper with the newspaper over the steering wheel, doing their hair, putting on clothes as they drive down the road, so eating. Anything they can do at home, they're doing when they're driving also.
Putting on makeup, I'm sure a lot of teens are doing that heading to school as well. Now, let's talk about, can a police officer actually pull someone over, write them a citation for doing any of these things?
They can. For reckless driving, it depends on what they're doing and how much is impairing their ability to drive.
When people are out there on the road and you're driving down through, say, the Parkway, and you're doing the speed limit 50. Okay, let's say you're doing 55 because you're trying to keep up with the rest of the traffic. And people are just zooming past you. You see them on the cell phone. Maybe they're reaching over or they're pulling a CD out from over their visor and trying to put that in. Mm-hmm. Is that something that we should be concerned about as other drivers? Is that when our defensive mode should kick in?
You hit it. Everybody should drive defensively. Not look for what you're doing and look for what everybody else is doing also. Try to prevent an accident that somebody else is going to cause, but you're going to be involved in it.
Now, we've talked about distractions that are cell phones, televisions, everything else that are inside the car. What about people? Other people in the car, how can they be distractions to you? Let's talk a little bit about that.
A lot of times when the teenagers go out, they want to take friends with them. They're listening to the radio. They're talking about what's going on this weekend, what's going to do that night. They're looking in the back seat. A lot of times adults are driving along with the kids in the back seat. They're acting up. They're trying to calm the dog down in the back seat, talk to the children at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's just they're distracted. Overall, pace of life has picked up. People have to be more places, do more things. They're in a hurry to get from one place to the next.
I guess bottom line is pay attention to driving and stay focused on the road. Right. Those other things can wait.
Yes, sir, it can.
All right. Sergeant Shahan, thank you so much. Sergeant Mark Shahan with the Huntsville Police Department.
Unless you've lost somebody that's close to you, it's hard to understand the grief that somebody goes through when there's a tragic accident.
Yeah, but a Limestone County family is leaning on their faith to help them cope with their daughter's death.
News Channel 19's Diana G. joins us now in our Decatur newsroom with more. Diana?
Well, Jerry and Kim, believe it or not, Riley Wade doesn't consider her daughter dead, even though she was killed in a car wreck nearly 2 years ago. The way she looks at it, death is a bridge in which we cross to another lifetime. Now, coming up later in this special, I'm going to introduce you to this Limestone County mother who deals with her tragic loss. She has planted a garden in memory of her 19-year-old daughter. Nancy Wade was leaving Calhoun Community College on her way to work when she lost control of her car one morning. Now, her dreams of becoming a pharmaceutical rep may be over, but now her mother dreams of the time that the two of them will be together once again. Live in Decatur, Diana G., News Channel 19.
All right, Dana, thanks a lot. You know, Huntsville Hospital is the only hospital in North Alabama who has a trauma center. So staff see a lot of serious injuries involving teenagers come through the emergency room doors.
That's right, and joining us now is Jeff Johnson, who is a trauma doctor here at Huntsville Hospital. You've been a doctor for 4 years now. What is the most common injury that you see when a teenager comes in from a car wreck?
Well, the variety of injuries is pretty varied. You'll see everything from head injuries, devastating chest, abdominal trauma, long bone fractures. So it really runs the gambit.
Dr. Johnson, the majority of the time when you see teens coming here and they've been involved in an accident, is it just one teen that's usually in the car, or are they in the car with several other people?
Oftentimes it's multiple teenagers in the car together, and you'll have multi-trauma incidents because of the number of kids that are in the car together, and that's probably a factor in the accident.
I'm sure one of the first things you ask them when they come in, if they're conscious, were you wearing your seatbelt? What do you find as far as the teens that are out there? Are they buckling up?
Unfortunately, a lot of the teenagers are not choosing to buckle up, and that contributes to the severity of their injuries. So we're seeing a large proportion that don't choose to use their seatbelts.
Obviously, school is out, we're in the summer. Do you think usually on a typical year, do you see more accidents involving teens during the summer or during the school year?
It does increase during the summer, and of course on the weekends, weekend nights, it's increased as well, even during the school year. But we do see a spike in teenage driving accidents during the summertime.
As a trauma doctor, of course, your first responsibility, I assume, is to stabilize that patient and get them ready for surgery or whatever they need. What do the kids tell you when they come in? Do they mention how the wreck happened? Are you concerned with that at all, or are you just concerned about getting them well?
Really, our primary concern is initial stabilization and assessment, trying to find all the injuries that the injured person has at that point and taking care of them. But oftentimes the teenage drivers will tell you, gosh, I did something that wasn't too smart. I made a bad decision.
Dr. Johnson, one more question here. How often do you see traumas coming here with teenagers where they don't walk back out that door?
Unfortunately, it's an occurrence that of course does occur. Fortunately, it's not as common as other problems with or other injuries, but it does happen, and it's unfortunate.
All right.
Even as a doctor, can you prepare for that?
No, you can't. And the hardest thing is talking to the family at that point.
All right. Dr. Jeff Johnson, thanks for being with us today.
You're welcome.
You know, when you get your license to drive, it's kind of a beginning of a new era.
Yeah, you feel free, but that freedom comes with a whole new set of responsibilities.
That's right. News Channel 19's Melissa Stevens is live this morning at the driver's license office on Church Street. And Melissa, you know, it's an exciting time for kids when they finally get that learner's permit or they take that test and get that driver's license.
It really is, Jerry. Like you said, we're here at the State Troopers Annex off Church Street, or AKA the place where you go to get your driver's license. Now, this place sends home a lot of happy teen drivers, but it can also be a place to send off some disappointed teen wannabe drivers. Now, we're here this morning. I'm joined by Timothy Harless and his father, Walton. And Timothy, you are getting ready to take your driver's license test this morning. So how are you feeling right now? Are you a little nervous or just excited?
A little of both, yeah.
Yeah? So you turned 16 yesterday, and so everyone associates turning 16 with getting your license. What do you associate with being able to get your license and drive? What does that mean to you?
A little freedom, like being able to go see my friends and stuff and not have to worry about rides and everything.
Yeah. Not having to depend on anybody for a ride. Are you going to have your own car?
Yes.
Now, when you also think about getting your license, does it make you feel like you've got a whole new responsibility on your hands?
Yeah, it's real big being having to worry about gas and just making sure everybody's safe and everything.
Good point. Now, Now, Dad, it sounds like you've taught him some good things when it comes to driving and responsibility. And I know you've been through 2 other teen drivers. So when you're training him, when he's been learning to drive, what are some of the pointers? What do you want him to know when it comes to driving?
Well, just to be aware of what's going on around him. I'm concerned about distractions inside the car and outside. Just not speeding, of course. Just driving defensively, good basic skills.
Right.
So.
Now, do you have concerns when your children, like I said, you've got 2 older daughters that have also gotten their licenses, and every time you take one of your children to get their driver's licenses, is there a little bit of concern in your mind? Like, what are your thoughts?
There are not concerns about the test per se. They've all approached it with great confidence, but I'm certainly a little more concerned when they're out on the roads. I know there's a lot of dangers, but at the same time, it is freedom, and it's a new adventure, and it's definitely a phase they need to approach with a lot of confidence.
Good point. And going through 2 other teen drivers, what do you think you've learned from those experiences?
Patience. Yeah, and there's some unexpected things that happen, so just have to take it, roll with the punches.
All right, good points. And now, do you feel ready to take this test this morning?
Yeah, it's a little nervous, but yeah, I'm ready.
All right, well, we wish you luck. Thanks for being with us this morning. Again, we're live here at the State Troopers Annex, where everyone's lined up and ready to get those tests and get their licenses and head out on the road. Reporting live in Huntsville, Melissa Stevens, News Channel 19.
All right, Melissa, thanks a lot. That's one way to get teens up bright and early, is to tell them they're going to go get their driver's license for the day.
Oh, they'll jump out of bed real quick for that.
Yeah, well, joining us now is local psychologist Dr. Kenneth Sullivan.
Thanks for joining us, first of all. We want to talk a little bit about parental influence, how important it is for a parent. There's an old saying, do as I say, not as I do, but I think in this case, we have to be an example for our teenage drivers. Don't you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Parents do teach children the driving skill, and they try to establish rules and hope the kids follow them. But the most important thing parents teach their kids is attitude. And, of course, that's done primarily by example.
So if we tell our children not to speed while they're in the car with us, or just period, we need to keep the speed limit ourselves.
Yes, and the whole attitude of safety and the certain amount of seriousness with that responsibility.
As a parent, when my oldest daughter was starting to drive, I got in the car with her and I talked with her, and that's something that we as parents need to do, discuss different situations that might come up when they're on the road, correct?
Yes, but also even before the children drive, shortly when they're like 14 and they have that interest in driving, I think it's easier for a child to hear commentary about driving when you're the one driving and not when they are.
Now, we've heard Sergeant Shahan, State Trooper Somerville, talk about a lot of these kids are involved in wrecks where other teens are involved. Should we, as parents, put a limit on the number of occupants that are in a vehicle with our children?
Yes, in fact, when my daughter was young, we encouraged her to keep stuff on the back seat so people couldn't really get in there, because it's so much safer to just have nobody in the back seat.
What about as far as drinking? I know that, kids aren't supposed to drink, but I know some of them do. What do we as parents tell our kids about drinking and driving?
Well, we tell them that they get a free ride home from anywhere with no questions asked anytime. And if they've been drinking and they call for a ride home, you don't get on them.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. It's just so much more dangerous to be in a car than to be drunk.
That's so true. All right, Dr. Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us. Now, one more question. I understand that you have personal experience when it comes to tragedy when you were a teenager. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, I had so many peers in high school that were killed, a number through the years. Mm-hmm. And it was just amazing just how little I learned from that. As a teenager, we want to appreciate that teenagers are made braver than they are wise, and it takes an awful lot to get them to realize the seriousness of what they're doing.
It's that attitude that we had as teenagers, and our kids probably have now. We feel invincible. We're indestructible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they need it at that age because they have so many challenges to face. But we want to appreciate that they're really having to work against their nature to be careful.
All right. Dr. Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Now, we've driven up on a wreck in our lives.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter whether you're driving on I-565 or an interstate, or whether you're a mile from home in your own neighborhood.
News Channel 19's Todd Bender takes a look at where the hot spots are here in Huntsville.
The Huntsville Police Department doesn't keep stats on dangerous intersections like it used to, so the best way to keep things in perspective is to say which streets are the busiest. And that's exactly what we did from our exclusive perspective from Skycam 19. As the population of Madison County explodes, more and more drivers are competing for the same space on the road. That means less time to react when something goes wrong at 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, especially during rush hour. That on-ramp from 565 to the Parkway is really bad. It gets backed up quite a bit.
Historically, Huntsville intersections like Sparkman and the Parkway and Jordan and University Drive have been called the most dangerous in the city. However, many drivers have issues with Memorial Parkway and the exits.
I think it's when you're traveling north on the Parkway and trying to get off the Clinton Avenue exit. There's way too much traffic trying to merge on when you're trying to merge off, and there's just not enough room to do it.
But the Parkway and the interstate aren't the only places where people are seeing problems. Just take a look at Highway 72 on the east side of Huntsville.
Going up over the mountain, the speed, and people aren't used to merging yet. Once they get used to it, it might be a little bit better.
Cars all around you and the cell phone going off and the radio going can strain even the most attentive driver. And even those guilty of not paying attention to all they should say, that is a big problem on the road.
I'd say people definitely need to pay attention. I'm probably one of the prime candidates that doesn't pay close attention.
With all the traffic these days, that's something you can't afford not to do. The PD says most crashes have one of two things in common, either speeding or someone not paying attention, and sometimes even both. So if you can take care of those two human factors, you should be all right, at least most of the time. In Huntsville, Todd Bender, News Channel 19.
Thank you, Todd. And joining us now, Nick Emmons.
Yeah, you know him best as News Channel 19's traffic reporter. News Channel 19 first at 4:30 and at 5.
Nick, you spend quite a few hours on the road across the Tennessee Valley every day. What do you see out there?
Well, Huntsville is not a really good city as far as drivers that follow the rules. We get a lot of folks that don't use turn signals, a lot of folks that won't let you merge into traffic, and those are adults. You put some teens in the mix and it really gets complicated. And every year about this time when we go into the spring, summer season, see a lot of the new drivers, and it's obvious that they're kids, they're teens that are, they're new, inexperienced drivers. A lot of tailgating, a lot of folks that, less than a car length between their car and another car on the road. And sometimes you just kind of want to pull them over and say, hey, ride with me for a little while. Let me show you some of the things that can happen. So it's something that you watch every day. I heard Curtis say earlier that you kind of get cold to it when you're around it all the time. And sometimes you have to kind of shake yourself and make yourself back up and say, hey, things can happen. But I think that's one of the big things that I see all the time is people just don't leave enough room. People aren't courteous to other drivers. And the cell phones, especially with the kids, they've got a cell phone, they've got a car, a new driver's license, and that cell phone's up against the ear. And most people drive with their right hand.
Yeah.
They'll put the cell phone up to their left ear. They're like this, driving along. Well, you have no vision over here.
And
you
then if it
decide you
falls,
want to
reach
change
down and pick it up.
lanes. Here you go. And a lot of times when somebody pulls out in front of you, you see that's what's happened. You can look at them and you want to really, just get mad at them and shake your fist at them. When you look at them, their phone's up there and they just absolutely don't see you.
And Nick, you're out early in the mornings, obviously doing traffic reports. You see kids as they're trying to head to school. Is it a factor with speed then, trying to rush, trying to beat the bell?
It's a last-minute dash. And the ones that you see, we have a lot around Madison County High School. We almost always have a wreck there. And it's kids that are hitting the railroad tracks a little too fast. They're trying to get into that parking lot at the last minute. So, yeah, it's definitely speed. And maybe they pick up a friend or two along the way. They're their transportation to school every day. And they're talking back and forth. They're talking about the day. And their attention's not on driving at all. Their attention is on getting to school and finding out what's going to happen that day.
And we understand that, but we want them to get there safely.
We want them to get there safely. We've all been there.
Yeah,
I remember as a teen when I got my driver's license, you'd go pile all your friends in the car and, you'd get out and have fun. But you just need to back up and think about, this can happen to me.
Yeah.
You know, when you see a wreck on television and you say it can't happen to you, well, it can, and it happens in a hurry.
Nick, we appreciate you joining us. We'll listen to you on the radio and every afternoon on News Channel 19.
Be there.
Thanks, Nick. A lot of schools are stepping into action to teach young drivers the responsibilities behind the wheel.
News Channel 19's Carson Clark joins us once again from Albertville. And Carson, I understand that traffic safety is taught rather early there.
Well, that's right, Jerry, and somebody who's kind of a guru of traffic safety here in Albertville, I guess, is Officer Doug McGee, and I guess you kind of do that, right? It's almost like a hobby in a way, right?
That's correct. I love to keep statistics on what's causing accidents and where they're happening and why they're happening here in Albertville.
What do you see as far as accidents go here in the city of Albertville?
Well, so far we were doing well until May, and then in May we have seen an increase, so we're about 6 above last year by the same period. In the end of May last year, we're about 6 up.
Good. How many of the accidents you see are teenagers involved in those?
Roughly 25%. So far this year, there's been maybe 50 that have been involved with teenagers.
What's usually the main reason that teenagers will have an accident?
The main reasons are speed, they're emotional drivers, inexperience, and the reason that's come up the last few years is cell phones. Cell phones has probably caused more accidents with teenagers than anything else.
And most teenagers are going to have a cell phone in the car with them, and they're going to be talking on it, right?
That's correct. Their right now is to get a vehicle at 16 and to get a cell phone at 16.
So do you, sometimes you give a speeding ticket to a teenager, right?
Yeah, because statistically they're a higher probability of having an accident, and as a student they can go to driving school here in Marshall County and they only have to pay for the class. So it's a little bit less expensive, and hopefully that'll reinforce that they need to slow down, pay more attention to their driving.
And as an officer, I'm sure it's always tough when you work a fatal accident, but it's even worse when a young person's involved.
Yes, it is. My 19-year-old neighbor was killed in a car wreck, and anytime you have anybody that's younger, it's a lot more difficult to deal with than an older person.
All right, well, I appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll be back just a little bit later. We're going to be talking with our teen panel again here in just a little while. Now we throw it back to the Huntsville ER.
All right, Carson, thank you. You know, every day paramedics are called out to go to the scene of a wreck.
Yeah, they have an address, a brief rundown of what's happened, but until they actually get there, they never know what they're going to see.
And joining us right now is Spencer Howard, who is a training officer with Hempsey Services here in Madison County. Thanks for joining us, Spencer.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Spencer, let's talk about what you see when you or your paramedics arrive on a wreck scene.
Well, the EMT's first job is to survey the scene to see how many people they may be injured and where those people are and the extent of their injuries, and try to determine who needs to be treated first.
How many wrecks that you respond to involve adults? How many involve teens? Has Hempsey ever broken that down?
We can. We don't run that statistic that often to look at that, but I would say that majority is probably adults. Now, the types of injuries that you see dealing with teens, especially since people think that they're safer in the back seat without a seatbelt, or a lot of times teens ride or kids ride, so they're not wearing their seatbelts in the back. And they need to remember that to be safe, you need to be wearing in all the seats in the car, including the back. They need to be wearing their seatbelts.
Now, let's talk about when you are there with a wreck, you've got survivors involved. Do paramedics ever actually talk with them to kind of sink in what's happening or what has happened? Especially if they have one critically injured or somebody who's, you have a fatality.
Well, at the time of an accident, their primary focus is to do patient care and to reassure them that they're going to be okay, and if they have loved ones with them or in the car, that they're going to be receiving good care. They don't really try to pass a message at that time because they've got their job to do. Occasionally afterwards, they may talk to them, depending on their extent of their injuries, of course, at the hospital. But at the actual time, really, it's to take care of them and assure them they're going to be okay and they're going to be taken care of.
Spencer, the paramedics across the Tennessee Valley, the guys and gals who respond to the scene, who are out there trying to save lives, if you could give any bit of advice to teens who may be watching this broadcast, what would it be?
Think before you act. Really pay attention. There's nothing wrong with having fun. Everybody wants to have fun. But there's some simple things you can do to make your fun more safe. Obey the speed limits and obey the traffic laws. Wear your seatbelts. Pay attention. It's very tempting to use your cell phones, and they see that a lot. Adults use their cell phones a lot too, so in turn they do it. But pay attention, just try to be safe when they're having their fun.
All right, Spencer Howard, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Let's check back in now with our teen panel in the WHNT studios to find out what they think about what we've been talking about, some of these driving distractions.
Steve, what is the group saying?
Well, I tell you what, guys, you've been watching and you've heard, about 30 minutes about all the things you do wrong. What do you think?
Well, I think that they're pretty right, but one thing that I think they're leaving out is the alcohol-related stuff.
Now, okay, talk about that. I would imagine you would say you have not had something to drink and driven.
I haven't.
You haven't, but do you have friends who have?
Yes.
Well, have you ridden with anybody that did that?
No. Usually I try to stay away from that group of people.
But is this something you must see it a lot, or you wouldn't have brought up? Do you see a lot of your friends, a lot of people you know, drinking and driving?
You don't really see it, but you go from school on Friday and you get back on Monday, and you usually hear about all the parties and stuff on Monday.
Well, I know you guys commented on the fact that more accidents happen on weekends. Does this surprise you?
Actually, it really doesn't. A lot of kids try to push the limit, try to stay out as late as they can, and sleep's also something that it becomes a factor when you're driving. A lot of kids are unaware that, sleep sometimes can have more of an effect on your driving than maybe alcohol does. And they become, tired at the wheel, and they're obviously going to be prone to accident, like possibly falling asleep at the wheel. And so that doesn't come to a surprise to me.
And Jenny Lou, you're learning how. Are there things that you're hearing you say, well, I'll never do that, or I wouldn't do that anyway? I mean, do you hear things that you know you won't do?
Yeah, the alcohol and stuff, I know that I'll never do that. Well, I have no doubt that some of it could happen to me. And I try to be cautious, but I would hope it wouldn't happen to me. But, yeah.
Well, now, you're learning how. We've got 3 drivers here. Have you ever gone faster than the speed limit? Raise your hands if you're a driver and you've gone faster than the speed limit. Well, you've gone faster as a passenger. And adults do wrong things also. But is it tough to watch adults do these things and not do them yourselves? Anybody want to answer that, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you learn from the adults, and when you see them driving faster, you're like, well, they can do it, I can do it, It's basically learning. I mean, it's imprinted in your mind that you follow what they do.
Well, that's not a good thing, Jonathan. Are you? What is something that you're seeing adults do that you will not do?
Reckless driving, I guess. Speeding. Excessively.
All the things. Yeah, speeding excessively. I mean, driving is a responsibility too, as well as a privilege, and it's really tough, isn't it, to do it right all the time? Okay. Well, thank you, guys. You've said a lot of important things here, and we appreciate it. Guys, some teen drivers who have a lot to think about, and it looks like they've already been thinking about it.
It sure does. Thank you, Steve. Well, for those young people who are involved in violent wrecks and are lucky enough to survive, the road to recovery can be long.
Very long one. Joining us now from Huntsville Hospital is physical therapist Lori Helm. Lori, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Lori, let's talk about physical therapy and recovery that a lot of these teens are undergoing when they're in accidents. What do you see and how do you have to work with these children?
Well, every patient varies greatly. It just depends on the extent of their injuries. I see them when they're here in the hospital. So first and foremost, we're working on trying to get them up and help them move around so that they're not getting a lot of muscle wasting and getting weak, not getting blood clots. It's just very important as soon as we can to start getting them up and working on them being able to get up, be independent, and move around.
When a teenager comes in and they have to go through rehab after a serious injury from a wreck or something, I'm sure there's a period where they're depressed. They're saying, why did this happen to me? Because before the accident, they were probably thinking, it can't happen to me, but then it does. Mm-hmm. How do you help them battle that emotional getting over the hill where it is, you've got to be able to do this?
You have to just find that fine balance of being encouraging and understanding what they're going through, and then knowing, well, this is my job. I have to help you through this. We've got to get up and we've got to help you move around. Everybody reacts a little bit differently. A lot of family support is always helpful. families are usually very encouraging, wanting to help, and it just takes a combination of everybody trying to encourage them to get them up and moving around. And usually after they start getting up and realize that they can do it, and they get over being scared, and they get over some of the pain, and they usually jump right in and are doing pretty good.
Lori, let's kind of drive this home to teenagers, because sometimes you hate to say it, but you almost have to use scare tactics to get to these teens. What kind of injuries are you seeing that you're working with these children on? You're saying there's a vast majority. Let's talk about some of the most severe cases.
Okay. I think that what a lot of teenagers see are your regular injuries if a patient gets a broken leg or a broken arm, and they know that those heal, and that it just, they hurt for a little while, but then they're better. The things that they're not seeing are the patients that are having head injuries or having spinal cord injuries where they hurt their back, they're hurting their spinal cord, they get injuries to their brain where they can't think on their own, they can't move on their own, and they have to have help to do everything. And those are the things that they don't see, and those are the things they need to realize that can happen in an instant, and then it takes a long time, and sometimes they never get back to being on their own.
Lori, we appreciate
like babies.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us today. Well, a church group in Marshall County is seeing this kind of recovery that we were talking about firsthand with a friend that we learned about a little earlier.
Yeah, News Channel 19's Carson Clark joins us now live from Albertville. Carson, how is this group going to step up and help their injured friend?
Well, that's right, Kim. These folks go to church with Isaac Godwin, and I guess right now they're trying to raise some money for him to be able to go to the Shepherd Clinic. Is that right?
Yeah, we've been doing a love offering after church because right now the biggest problem the family's having is money-wise.
Yeah, covering non-insurance expenses like stuff that doesn't pay for insurance.
They're hoping, I guess, over the Shepherd Clinic to help him get some more mobility back in his legs and everything, right?
Yeah, the outlook's not too good right now, but we're praying for a miracle.
Yeah, he has a lot of support from friends, family, and the church family. So I think with enough prayers, he can overcome anything.
Okay, now sometimes I wonder, how old are you?
I'm 16.
Okay, so you've been driving for just, I guess, a couple of months, right?
About a year.
Okay. Have you had an accident?
One.
Was that too serious? Or?
It was, I rear-ended somebody by accident, so.
What about you?
I'm 17 and no, currently I've had no wrecks, so.
All right, and you?
17 and have a clean slate.
What about you?
17 and I've totaled one and had two like small fender benders, but that's about it.
But you didn't get hurt or anything, right?
No, I had just had like one bruise, so I'm good.
Have those accidents, does that affect the way you drive now? You try to look out more for other drivers and things?
Well, because of the fender benders I have, but I was going really slow when I totaled my vehicle. I was only going like 30, so I was driving very carefully.
So did all of you take driver's ed at school?
Yes, sir.
Did you find it helpful at all?
Oh, I found it very helpful, when it comes to, stopping at stop signs and stuff.
It's helpful insurance-wise also.
Insurance-wise,
Parents
yeah.
like that.
So after all these accidents that you've heard about, are you gonna try to drive more defensively and everything, right?
Most definitely, because we've lost 2 or 3 actually in the past couple of years, and it's pretty important to drive safe because it could be you.
Yeah, not only do you want to hurt yourself, you don't want to hurt your friends, and especially emotionally. Yeah.
All right, well, I appreciate you joining us today. All right, thank you. We'll throw it back now to the Huntsville ER.
All right, Carson, thank you. Smart teams over there.
They are. We've got smart teams all across the Tennessee Valley.
Yeah, if it was within our power, the one thing that I would say is that I wish I would never see another teen die or be injured in a wreck. But unfortunately, we can't do that.
And it's going to happen.
Yeah. Joining us now once again is Trooper Curtis Somerville. Curtis, the kids have been talking about drinking and driving. How big of a problem is that?
Okay, drinking and driving is a problem. However, for teenagers, believe it or not, it is not a bigger problem as it is for adults. Now, there are some situations where we have teenagers that are involved in alcohol-related collisions. I think the big problem for teenagers is just distraction, inattention, and just immaturity on their part. Oftentimes, to go back to DUI, at any point in time, just from a